Frameshift drive charging. Frameshift drive charging. Frameshift drive charging. Orbital flight engaged. Docking request denied.
DeLacy, Whiskey, Echo, Romeo. Please submit a landing request on approach, Commander. Request denied. Close distance and resubmit request. Clearance denied. Stay on course and resubmit docking request when in range. Permission authorized. Please head directly for Bay 04. Automated docking initiated.
Landing gear deployed.
Docking complete. Ground crew dispatched. It's good to have you with us, Commander. at limit.
Frameshift
Traffic control
drive
active.
charging. 4, 3, 2, 1. Engage. Frameshift drive charging.
forced to respond to aggressive actions. For peace of mind, please don't ship weapons while inside the building. If you're unable to complete docking procedure within your time
way is cleared for departure.
Frameshift drive charging.
You've now exceeded the no-fire zone. We hope you have a safe journey.
Hudson contravention sparks federal protests. President Zachary Hudson's proposal to remove the 8-year limit on his term of office has led to public unrest on many federal worlds. Supporters of Shadow President Felicia Winters have taken the lead in protesting against the Hudson contravention, which is currently being debated in Congress. The situation has been extensively covered by news feeds across the Federation. Federal Free Press, as always, Felicia Winters is the only grown-up in the room. She has rightfully objected to the sitting president's attempt at throwing away the rulebook. Repealing the 77th Amendment would be a fundamental blow to our millennia-old democracy. Sol today, what's the choice here? Retain Hudson for a few more years until things calm down, or hand power to Winters
Frameshift drive charging.
and watch the federal government weaken and collapse under a weight the Shadow President cannot possibly bear. The Federal Times, moderate Republican voters are taking a dim view of the Hudson contravention.
4, 3, 2, 1.
Primarily because it denies them the option to choose a new administration. Vice President Jerome Archer, Secretary of State Lana Berkovich, and Grand Attorney Edwin Espinosa are the most likely presidential candidates, but none of them will be able to run for office in 3309 if Hudson gets his way. Further Omega Grid secrets revealed. ACT has released details about a plan by the Lords of Restoration to frame Hadrian Augustus Duval as the leader of the NMLA. The information was extracted from the NMLA's Omega Grid network and published by Captain Saskia Landau. It was Senator Ursula Torquatis who devised a scheme to undermine the imperial family and turn citizens against them by exposing a Duval as the NMLA mastermind. Hadrian Duval was seen as the logical choice since many viewed him as an extremist through his prior association. Pilots form vanguard against Thargoid attacks.
Frameshift drive charging.
Pilots Federation alert. Commanders are resisting Thargoid incursions in the Dan, HIP 12314 and Norney systems. Although Aegis support vessels have been repurposed,
4, 3, 2, 1.
offer support in all three systems, the organization remains officially disbanded. It has fallen to individual pilots to defend the populations from swarms of Thargoid vessels. The Alliance Defense Force, Federal Navy, all intend to replace Aegis with their own anti-Xeno task forces, but these have yet to materialize. This was remarked upon by independent journalist Flint Firemaker Lapos. We've got the Alliance trying to sell its own people to Sirius Corporation, the Empire somehow misplacing its own Emperor, and the Federation being torn to pieces by its crazy president. Who's got time to worry about Thargoids? I'll tell you who. The civilians in the systems they're invading. Our so-called
Frameshift drive charging.
leaders are praying that Salvation will step in and save the day, but he could be an alien himself for all we know. Commodore Morag Halloran, who serves as Salvation's military coordinator, was approached
3, 2, 1.
by Vox Galactica to comment on his strategy for combating the latest Thargoid activity. Salvation is currently focused on further development of the anti-Xeno superweapon. At present, this is the most efficient use of his time and resources, rather than small-scale engagement. Rest assured that, before long, we shall take the fight to the Thargoids once more. Empire declares reprisals against Darkwater. Pilots Federation alert. Darkwater Inc. in the Summerland system has been declared a hostile military target for its role in abducting Emperor Arisa Lavigny Deval.
Frameshift drive charging.
The private military firm, led by Colonel Ronan Brock, was secretly hired by the Lords of Restoration to train and equip the NMLA. Darkwater troops also kept the Emperor imprisoned in a
3, 2, 1.
sealed bunker for over a year. Once their involvement was revealed by ACT, Darkwater's forces regrouped around the megaship Pearl Mandate. Colonel Brock led an attempt to gain control of Summerland as a defensive measure, but was unsuccessful. The mercenaries have now been branded as wanted criminals by the system authorities. The order to strike against Darkwater came directly from Emperor Arisa. I call upon my loyal servants and all other warriors of honor to wipe out this nest of traitors. We remember the innocent victims of the NMLA by punishing those who enabled them. The Summerland Patrons Party will redeem combat bonds for destroyed Darkwater ships at the Starport Henry O'Hare's hangar. Although Summerland's system is typically permit-locked, the Empire has arranged a total exemption for independent
Frameshift drive charging.
pilots for a 3-week period. To guarantee that Darkwater is thoroughly eliminated, the Empire is offering a range of incentives to pilots. These include awarding the rank of Master in the Imperial Navy Auxiliary, discounts on Imperial ships and weapons in the Summerland system, and Imperial Hammer railguns for the 10 pilots who achieve the most combat bonds.
Frameshift drive charging.
Additional services planned for Colonia Bridge. Pilots Federation alert. Brewer Corporation has requested a new batch of deliveries to the Alcor and Colonia systems. The
4, 3, 2, 1.
Colonia Bridge is comprised of 56 stationary megaships and 6 starports, providing facilities to travelers between the core systems and the Colonia region. However, the starports are still in a state of construction. The Megacorp outlined its latest requirements in a press release. Phase 4 of the Colonia Bridge project launched with a highly satisfactory first week. Shipments of coffee, emergency power cells, geological equipment and liquid oxygen arrived in sufficient numbers to ensure universal cartographics and Vista Genomics services were added to all 6 starports. The goal of the second week is to continue assembling the station's infrastructure and install Pioneer supplies, crew lounge and search and rescue services. To achieve this, performance enhancers, personal weapons and survival equipment are needed in large quantities. Pilots are asked to provide these at McDonald's Settlement in the Alcor system and Jek Station in the Colonia system. As well as guaranteeing generous reimbursements to all contributors, Brewer Corporation is pleased to offer warm, white cockpit lights as an additional token of gratitude. The third and fourth weeks of the project's final phase will focus on adding further services on the Colonia Bridge starports to accommodate all pilot professions. Arisa retakes the Imperial throne. Emperor Arisa Lavigny Deval has attended a public ceremony following her year-long abduction by the Lords of Restoration. Her proclamation from Truskin Square, standing before millions of capital citizens and flanked by legions of Imperial Guard, was broadcast across all channels. To those who protected the Empire during my enforced absence, I offer my deepest gratitude. My trusted Chancellor, senators and security agencies are to be commended. To those who dared to attack Imperial citizens, who dared to impersonate me and mislead my people, who took the lives of my family. Know this, there will be no place to hide from my wrath. And to all citizens who may fear these uncertain times, I vow that your Emperor will lead you into the glorious future that is ours by right. Subsequent messages from the Imperial Palace praised ACT and its supporters for their work in freeing Arisa and destroying the NMLA. Princess Aisling Deval was also thanked for her dedication to finding out the truth, although some news feeds have noted that Aisling would hold a strong claim on a vacated throne. Federation divided by Hudson's proposal. President Zachary Hudson's intention to remove the limit on his term in office has caused a deep rift among congressmen and voters alike. Political correspondent Sophia Trevino analyzed the situation in the Federal Times. Ever since the 77th Amendment to the Federal Accord was ratified in 2594, no president has remained in office for longer than 8 years. This is why the Hudson Contravention, as Congress officially refers to it, has turned up the heat on the simmering political division within the Federation. Members of the cabinet and other leading Republicans have argued passionately that only Zachary Hudson has the experience and fortitude to guide the Federation through this eventful period in history. His supporters point to successes such as curtailing the secession crisis, ending the
System scan complete.
NMLA threat and introducing greater security via the Proactive Detection Bureau. However, others insist that repealing this amendment could pave the way from democracy to dictatorship. Two former presidents, Antonia Madison and Jasmina Halsey, have publicly condemned the Hudson Contravention as unconstitutional and dangerous. There are expectations that Shadow President Felicia Winters will move for a vote of no confidence. Political analysts suspect that after several controversial leadership decisions from Hudson last year, he would be unlikely to win over a majority in Congress. ACT exposes the Lords of Restoration. The affiliated counterterrorism unit has unveiled a secret cabal of Imperial senators who masterminded the NMLA's terrorist activity. The information was obtained after ACT successfully penetrated the NMLA's dark comms network. Captain Saskia Landau provided this summary to the media. Senators Geron, Jordan, Nerva, Scordato and Torquatus were at the heart of a powerful conspiracy to permanently remove the position of Emperor. They called themselves the Lords of Restoration, based on their aim to restore executive power to the Senate. The NMLA became their terroristic agents, weaponized to assassinate the Devals and other obstacles. Its members were militarized at dark water training camps and provided with sophisticated equipment by corrupt Imperial intelligence agents.
Frameshift drive charging.
But the Lords could never fully control the terrorist figurehead Theta 7, whose attacks against non-Imperial starports were not part of their original plan. Marlinism was also exploited as a
3, 2, 1.
political lever. The hope was that, compared to this democratic ideology, citizens would view a senator-led empire as a moderate compromise once the Imperial family was gone. While this led to the establishment of the Marlinist colonies, the Lords' later attempts to influence those systems via puppet politicians did not succeed. Following the assassinations of Prince Harold and other Devals, the Lords abducted Emperor Arisa Lavigny Deval in January 3307. She was kidnapped en route to a secure location, with Senator Nerva falsifying confirmation of her safe arrival. This allowed the Lords to engineer communications with the Senate via a virtual doppelganger, which were accepted as genuine since they were verified by Imperial intelligence agents. ACT is working closely with Imperial security agencies to identify all those who collaborated with the Lords of Restoration. New Thargoid assaults in 3 systems. The HIP 12314, Dan and Norni systems have come under heavy attack by Thargoid vessels. Vox Galactica featured this report by freelance war correspondent Jade Sanderlin. The Thargoids have been unusually aggressive in recent months, as attested by the drifting wreckages of many independent ships. When Salvation repelled their forces from the Delphi, Maya and Arab systems in December, some believed it was only a matter of time before the aliens retaliated.
Welcome, Commander. Please request docking permission before approaching a landing pad. Docking
Appears
permission
that time
is
has come.
unavailable.
Although the Thargoid
to move
species
within
is often
7.5
viewed as
kilometers.
territorial, on this occasion,
Landing pad access denied. You're outside the 7.5-kilometer range for docking requests. Clearance
they have
denied.
pushed further
You
towards
need to move within 7.5
authorities in
kilometers.
all 3
Access granted. Please follow standard docking protocols, Commander. Docking
systems were
requires
unprepared for
confirmed.
the
Assisted
incursions and
approach
have
is
sent out a
go.
general call for assistance. The superpowers are still in the process of forming their anti-Zenith task forces and thus unable to help. Fortunately, despite Aegis being officially defunct, some of its support megaships have yet to be decommissioned. These have been staffed with emergency crews and rushed into service in all 3 systems. As pilots race into combat once more, many must be wondering if the risks are now even greater. Have the Thargoids extended their reach into human space?
Landing gear deployed.
Which systems might they strike at next? And is further escalation a price to be paid every time Salvation's superweapon is deployed? Colonia Bridge project enters final phase. Pilots Federation.
Contact confirmed. Clamps engaged. Our services are at your disposal.
Alert. Deliveries have been requested in the Alcor and Colonia systems to implement services to the Colonia Bridge starports. A press release from Brewer Corporation provided the details. The 4th and final phase of our Colonia Bridge project will take place over the next 4 weeks. Our goal is to finish constructing the starports that were recently added to the route between the Colonia and Alcor systems. For the first week, we require deliveries of coffee, emergency power cells, geological equipment and liquid oxygen to McDonald's settlement in the Alcor system and Jacques station in the Colonia system. If we receive sufficient commodities, we can add universal cartographics and Vista Genomics to all 6 stations. Everyone at Brewer Corporation was impressed by the galactic community's dedication to improving the travel corridor to the Colonia region. For this week's initiative,
Landing gear retracted.
Landing clamps disengaged.
be rewarded with a
Departure
generous
confirmed.
number of credits. In subsequent weeks, we will be offering a variety of additional rewards. Following feedback from our shareholders, we also plan to install beacons to recognize the major contributors to all phases of the Colonia Bridge project. The top 10 contributors of every past and upcoming Colonia Bridge initiative will be listed on these beacons to immortalize the names of these pilots. The Colonia Bridge starports currently offer rearm, refuel and repair services as well as basic commodity trading. The 2nd, 3rd and 4th weeks of this phase will focus on adding further services. Arisa rescued from Yelong captivity. Emperor Arisa Lavigny Duval has been found alive after being secretly imprisoned by the...
Speed restrictions have been lifted. Flight control signing off.
Frameshift drive
private
charging.
military firm Darkwater Inc. The Imperial Herald
4, 3, 2, 1. Engage.
published a special report on recent events. The absence of the Emperor from public life for over a year has prompted much speculation. The Senate claimed that she was being kept safe from assassination attempts by the NMLA and that they remained in contact with her. In truth, she was being held captive by the NMLA's secret
Frameshift drive charging.
benefactors. This group of Imperial senators referred to themselves as the Lords of Restoration. They were revealed only after ACT recruited independent pilots to help decipher the terror.
4, 3, 2, 1.
This is Dark Comms Network. Chancellor Blaine immediately ordered the Imperial Guard into battle against Darkwater soldiers. A ship fleeing from the Summerland system was intercepted, aboard which was a cryogenic pod containing the Emperor herself. She was swiftly returned to Capital and is currently under the care of the Imperial Palace medical team. The IISS has launched a security operation based on ACT's information. This reveals that groups within the Senate, Darkwater and Imperial Intelligence formed a long-running conspiracy to fund and empower the NMLA. Senators Alberto Gueron, Carl Nerva, Ursula Torquatis and several others have been
System scan complete.
placed under arrest. ACT has stated that it will provide additional information soon. Concerns raised over Alliance Sirius Pact. The recent battle in the Riot system has caused Sirius Corporation to question the terms of its partnership with the Alliance. The Alliance Tribune's political correspondent Vanya Driscoll reported, "When Sirius Corporation megaships arrived in 4 Allied systems, it's fair to assume they anticipated a degree of public resistance. But being directly attacked by the Riot Mining Coalition clearly wasn't part of their risk assessment." Leon Rui has urgently sought assurances from the Alliance that such conflicts will not happen again. The Megacorp CEO claimed that he has a duty to protect his employees from aggression by their own clients. In response, Prime Minister Edmund Mahon personally guaranteed that this unfortunate incident was a one-off,
Frameshift drive charging.
stressing that Sirius personnel have been welcomed in the Alioth, Aranpox and Dijian systems. He added that the Alliance Defense Force is working closely with Admiral Nicholas Glass, the Sirius Navy's
3, 2, 1.
representative. But others in the Assembly are now openly questioning the wisdom of the Strategic Defense Pact. Although Councillor Nakato Kane's opposition to Mahon is often viewed as predictable, more members now agree with her that many allied factions will reject the assertion that Sirius Corporation is an ally to be trusted. The fall of Aegis. Shutdown procedures for the anti-Zeno organization are continuing, despite Aegis's warnings that Azimuth has returned. Conrad Sterling reported on the situation for Vox Galactica. "We now know that the Alexandria megaship was targeted by a hostile force that could be Azimuth Biochemicals, the 200-year-old corporation which owned the Adamastor and Hesperus. In the face of this new evidence, Aegis leaders have petitioned for it to be reinstated. Even while accounting for this new evidence, the Bauman report has exposed a litany of organizational failures within Aegis. There is still a broad consensus among politicians that the organization should have done more to repel the Thargoids. Many senior military figures have switched focus to Aegis's controversial rival Salvation, despite his mysterious nature. As one Imperial Navy admiral succinctly put it, Salvation's methods have proved more effective in counteracting the Thargoid threat. The issue of military staff defections also appears to have been resolved. Alliance, Federal and Imperial fleets have open channels of secondment, allowing naval crews to voluntarily take positions aboard Salvation's vessels without resigning their commissions. However, one of Aegis's requests has been authorized. There will be a public ceremony to posthumously award Medals of Honor to Captain Jacob Morales and the 4,000 people who lost their lives aboard the Alexandria. Hudson attempts to remove presidential limit. The federal government has announced plans to extend Zachary Hudson's term as president beyond the legally allotted span. Every Federation president serves a single term of 8 years. President Hudson assumed the role in June 3301 and is therefore due to step down in June 3309 following an election to select his replacement. Secretary of State Lana Berkovich delivered the proposal to Congress. "We live in extraordinary times, and all signs point to further challenges in the coming years. Our people deserve a steady hand at the helm rather than being forced to change political course, especially with the tempestuous developments found within our neighboring superpowers. It is therefore in the public interest that we temporarily suspend the arbitrary 8-year limitation to allow President Hudson to continue steering the Federation through the coming storms." Shadow President Felicia Winters condemned the proposal. Pilots form vanguard against Thargoid attacks. Pilots Federation alert. Commanders are resisting Thargoid incursions in the Dan, HIP 12314 and Norni systems. Although Aegis support vessels have been repurposed to offer support in all three systems, the organization remains officially disbanded. It has fallen to individual pilots to defend the populations from swarms of Thargoid vessels. The Alliance Defense Force, Federal Navy and Imperial Navy all intend to replace Aegis with their own anti-Xeno task forces, but these have yet to materialize. This was remarked upon by independent journalist Flint Firemaker Lafos. We've got the Alliance trying to sell its own people to Sirius Corporation, the Empire somehow misplacing its own emperor, and the Federation being torn to pieces by its crazy president. Who's got time to worry about Thargoids? I'll tell you who, the civilians in the systems they're invading. Our so-called leaders are praying that Salvation will step in and save the day, but he could be an alien himself for all we know. Commodore Morag Halloran, who serves as Salvation's military coordinator, was approached by Vox Galactica to comment on his strategy for combating the latest Thargoid activity. Salvation is currently focused on further development of the anti-Xeno superweapon. At present this is the most efficient use of his time and resources, rather than small-scale engagement. Rest assured that, before long, we shall take the fight to the Thargoids once more.
Landing gear deployed.
Landing successful. Clear to offload.
Scan detected. Frameshift drive charging. System scan complete. Frameshift drive charging.
The Alliance. History. Alioth was colonized. The crucible in which the Alliance was forged was Alioth, a system so rich in gas and mineral resources that early surveyors considered it a stellar El Dorado. When the Federation established its first colony on Alioth 5b in 2452, they gave the planet the less grandiose name of Fruitcake, as mineral deposits lay in the loamy soils as abundantly as raisins in cake. Later, commentators would reflect, bitterly, that the world was well named because everyone wanted a piece. A conflict over mining rights drew in the superpowers. Alioth's prosperity soon attracted corporations eager to support the developing system in exchange for a share of the profits. A dispute over rights quickly escalated into an armed conflict, prompting the Empire to dispatch a military force, ostensibly for the colonists' protection. The Federation also sent ships, but theirs were a response to the corporation's plea for aid. Unable to directly engage the Federal ships without sparking a war, the Empire covertly encouraged the Alioth colonists to renounce the Federation and accept Imperial protection, thus freeing the Empire to engage with the occupying Federal forces in sympathy with the will of the people. This marked the first of many incidents in which the people of Alioth were used to advance the agenda of another power. Federation-sponsored insurrection. In 2530, the Federation set out to undermine Imperial control of Alioth by exploiting local resentment of the governor. They covertly supported acts of protest and petty vandalism. Then, when the inevitable Imperial crackdown followed, stoked the fires of social unrest. A terrorist movement called the Quakers emerged, and the atrocities escalated. The years that followed saw a protracted and degrading series of proxy wars and cynical propaganda campaigns as the Federal, Imperial, and corporate powers all contended for Alioth. The system made an abortive attempt to establish its independence in 2617, resulting in a short-lived cooperation between the Empire and the Federation, neither of which were willing to allow this. The Revolution. In the early 4th millennium, both the Federation and the Empire had a presence in the Alioth system. Fruitcake, now known as Gordonworld, was a federal protectorate, while the Empire had earlier conducted terraforming experiments on the world of New California, and also held gas mining platforms in the system. The federal corporations supplying New California had raised the prices of their goods several times in the previous years, and when they imposed yet another price hike, the planet's inhabitants revolted. In the insurrection that followed, rebels commandeered any available ships and headed out to the gas mining platforms, where they attacked the outpost's corporate employees. Alarmed, the Empire and the Federation dispatched ships to put down the rebellion, but were beaten back by a hastily assembled force made up of fighters from Alioth and, crucially, volunteers from nearby independent systems. Neither the Empire nor the Federation were able to gain a foothold, and eventually both forces had to withdraw. The Empire faced too many logistical problems fighting so far from home, while the Federation's efforts were undermined by public sympathy for the rebels. An alliance was brokered. The victory in Alioth had proven that independent systems working together could hold their own against the superpowers. It fell to pilot Mick Turner and scientist Meredith Argent to ride the wave of public spirit and propose a permanent alliance, under whose aegis independent systems could enjoy freedom from imperial and federal interference. The alliance was founded in 3230, and in the next 2 decades, it expanded its membership to more than 20 systems, some defecting from the Federation and the Empire, others pledging as independents. The Alliance. Society. Many worlds, few rules, no overlords. The Alliance's Articles of Membership are designed to unite the member systems with strong, straightforward bonds that allow as much self-determination as possible. Membership guarantees mutual prosperity through guaranteed free trade and security through the Alliance Defense Force, while leaving much of the business of government to the individual members. The Alliance Assembly acts as a central arbitration committee, helping to settle disputes between member systems. It also oversees formal arrangements between members, such as treaties, research goals, and mutually agreed policies. As no one system can be allowed to carry more weight than another, the Assembly frequently finds itself bogged down in endless back and forth negotiations. Getting them to agree on anything is a task often compared to herding linglangs, notoriously ill-tempered carnivores from the Achenar system. A body of civil servants who remain uninvolved in politics handle most of the day-to-day administrative work that enables the Alliance to function. Conditional autonomy for member systems. Alliance members are required to subscribe to and uphold a code of human rights, and to have a democratically elected government. Citizens of any member state have a right of freedom of movement and residence within any other member state. Furthermore, all member systems are obliged to give immediate military assistance to any fellow member when necessary.
Help needed.
The Alliance. Military. The Alliance Defense Force. While each Alliance member system maintains its own navy, all members are required to commit ships and crew to the Alliance Defense Force. This rapid response group usually remains within Alliance space, and its tasks vary from providing a beleaguered system with military assistance to evacuating settlements hit by natural disaster. A 6-member Council of Admirals oversees the Alliance Defense Force. It is accountable to the Assembly, but does not require its approval before taking action. This freedom of decision-making prevents urgent military action being delayed by tedious debate. The Alliance. Culture and values. Cooperation, mutual aid, tolerance, and respect. The values that bind the Alliance systems also hold true on an interpersonal level. Just as the different worlds of the Alliance formally recognize one another's legitimacy and value, individuals are generally reluctant to show prejudice against others, and will band together to help those in genuine need. Diversity is strength. Members of the Alliance are not obliged to conform to what they consider the corporate saturation of federal culture or the status-obsessed posturing of the Imperials. Individual systems are encouraged to preserve and celebrate their own cultural identities. This approach results in a rich variety of artistic, literary, and dramatic output. Free to speak, free to protest. One curious cultural constant across the Alliance member systems is the way the citizens indulge their freedom to complain. They can criticize their governments without fear of repression, and they frequently do so. Previous experience of exploitation has left many citizens cynical, but possessed of a certain mordant humor and a willingness to take life as it comes. The Alliance. Diplomatic relations. The Federation. Alliance attitudes to the Federation vary sharply, depending on whether one is asking about the Federation's government or its citizenry. The government is seen as a hidebound relic, unable to arrest its slow decline into decadence, but the general populace are much more compassionately viewed. An Alliance citizen, proud of his or her own emancipation, is likely to have a rather condescending view of a federal citizen. They are characterized as ignorant dupes, kept satiated by mass-market entertainment and branded consumer goods. This is not seen as their fault, however. On the contrary, it is widely held that the Federation and the corporate barons deliberately keep the people in this servile state. The Alliance is more interested in enticing federal systems to join its union, thereby winning the moral war, than in exacting vengeance for the wrongs of the past. There has been too much violence already. The Empire. To the Alliance, the Empire is anathema. With its monolithic culture, veneration of opulence, disdain for human rights and tolerance of slavery, it could not be further from the Alliance's values of mutual respect and freedom from exploitation. Yet, for all this, many Alliance members would rather deal with the Empire than the Federation. The common belief is that the Federation will always pretend to be something it is not. At least with the Empire, you know what you're dealing with. Most Alliance citizens view the emergence of a progressive movement within the Empire with cynicism. Everyone knows that the Empire is incapable of changing its ways. The whole Imperial social model is an imitation of the past. But some in the Alliance nevertheless welcome the ascension of the first female Emperor. The edifice may not be about to crumble, but such a profound change cannot be ignored.
Hudson contravention sparks federal protests. President Zachary Hudson's proposal to remove the 8-year limit on his term of office has led to public unrest on many federal worlds. Supporters of Shadow President Felicia Winters have taken the lead in protesting against the Hudson contravention, which is currently being debated in Congress. The situation has been extensively covered by news feeds across the Federation. Federal Free Press. As always, Felicia Winters is the only grown-up in the room. She has rightfully objected to the sitting president's attempt at throwing away the rulebook. Repealing the 77th Amendment would be a fundamental blow to our millennia-old democracy. Sol today, what's the choice here? Retain Hudson for a few more years until things calm down, or hand power to Winters and watch the federal government weaken and collapse under await the shadow.
The Guardians. Introduction. The Guardians were a non-human race that occupied a large area of space several million years ago. At its height, the Guardian civilization was technologically superior to human civilization of the 33rd century, and occupied an area of roughly equivalent size. The Guardians endured as a spacefaring civilization for at least 8,000 years, before being destabilized by a lengthy civil war. The surviving Guardians were then destroyed by artificially intelligent machines of their own creation. The galaxy contains the ruins of dozens of Guardian settlements, and data logs recovered from these sites have allowed humanity to compile a remarkably detailed picture of Guardian society. The Guardians. Early history. The Guardian Society originally consisted of groups of pack hunters who banded together for mutual protection before organizing themselves into clans. Even at this stage, the Guardians were highly intelligent, and they developed sophisticated hunting strategies that quickly saw them become their planet's apex predator. The Guardians' nascent civilization consisted of two discrete ethnic groups, one based primarily in the south of the planet and one in the north. As these groups expanded, they began to encroach on each other's territory, leading to a conflict that quickly blossomed into civil war. The Northern Clan, despite being the smaller of the two groups, overcame their enemy swiftly and with minimal bloodshed, bringing the entirety of the Guardian civilization under their leadership. In the centuries that followed, the Guardian Society developed rapidly. Despite their warlike instincts, the Guardians possessed a remarkable capacity for collaboration and compromise. Their willingness to defer immediate gains in favor of lasting societal benefits allowed them to establish a stable, mutually cooperative society that was to remain peaceful and prosperous for thousands of years. The Guardians. Technological era. Although the Guardian Society was in many ways a model of social equilibrium, the Guardians were nevertheless at the mercy of an insidious issue: overpopulation. As their civilization grew and the amount of available land and resources dwindled, the Guardians set their sights on interplanetary colonization. By this time, the Guardians had developed a rudimentary form of space travel, but as the pressures of overpopulation became more acute, the rate of technological progress accelerated, and the Guardians' imperfect starships were soon supplanted by fast, powerful spacefaring vessels. In the centuries that followed, the Guardian civilization expanded rapidly, eventually coming to occupy a region equal to that inhabited by present-day humanity. The Guardians' next major development was the creation of an interstellar communications system known as the Monolith Network.
Incoming mission-critical message.
Due to functioning as a comprehensive cultural archive, the network allowed those connected to it to freely and instantaneously share knowledge and ideas. The connection to the network was dependent on the use of neural implants, and some of the Guardians were uneasy about this fusion of biological and non-biological.
Docking request granted.
The Guardians. War with the Thargoids. Tens of thousands of years earlier, when the Guardians were still a non-spacefaring race, a group of Thargoids entered what would later become Guardian space, looking for new systems to colonize. In addition to earmarking several systems containing ammonia worlds, they prepared a number of planets for occupation by seeding them with barnacles. These genetically modified constructs were designed to extract resources from a planet and transform them into resources more useful to the Thargoids. For the Thargoids, seeding a planet with barnacles was an
Landing gear deployed.
important step in preparing an area for occupation. The Thargoids did not return to these systems for thousands of years, and when they did, they discovered that a new race had occupied them: the Guardians. The Thargoids promptly attacked.
Docking successful. Engines disengaged.
Due to their innate territorialism, the Guardians responded with a partial retreat, but they also started trying to find ways to communicate with the Thargoids, hoping to determine the cause of their aggression and perhaps negotiate a truce. After considerable effort, they succeeded in acquiring sufficient understanding of the Thargoids' language to determine
Incoming message.
the invaders' agenda, but they were unable to convince the Thargoids they bore them no ill will, and the Thargoids were unshakable in their belief that they must repel any race that posed a potential threat. The Guardians were left with no choice but to defend themselves militarily. At first, they deployed soldiers, but they quickly realized that drones and other mechanized defenses would be more effective against such a physically formidable enemy. Within a relatively short period of time, the Guardians' war machines became highly sophisticated, able to recognize Thargoid engineering and to operate entirely independently. Similarly, the Thargoid's biomechanical technology was engineered to identify anything of Guardian origin. To this day, many millions of years after the Guardians disappeared, Guardian artifacts are still able to recognize Thargoid technology, and Thargoid technology still reacts negatively to the presence of Guardian artifacts. The Guardians' war machines felt no fear, fatigue, or uncertainty. The Thargoids, meanwhile, had entered Guardian space unprepared for a protracted military campaign, and ultimately they were forced to retreat. For the Guardians, this was cause for celebration, but many still harbored doubts about the rapid rate of technological progress, doubts that the development of sophisticated military hardware had done nothing to alleviate. The Guardians. Final era. For decades, the Guardians have been experimenting with artificial intelligence, but the creation of the Monolith Network and the knowledge sharing it facilitated dramatically accelerated the rate of progress. Soon, the Guardians' experiments bore fruit, resulting in the first fully sentient machines. These constructs were seen as a means to further enhance the Guardians' technological mastery, and were integrated into various aspects of their society. New neural implants were developed that connected the Guardians with both the constructs and the Monolith Network in a symbiotic circle. But not everyone was happy with this development. The Guardians had always venerated nature, and many saw this new paradigm as a perversion of the natural order. A schism emerged between the nature-worshipping traditionalists and the technologically minded progressives, a schism that widened with alarming speed. Efforts were made to diffuse the rising tension, but the traditionalists felt irrevocably alienated by the rapid rate of change. The constructs and the Monolith Network became scapegoats for all manner of social ills, and the traditionalists began to clamor for a return to simpler times. Ultimately, the ideological divergence proved insurmountable.
Landing gear retracted. Ship
The Second
raised.
Civil War
Engines
erupted,
engaged.
quickly engulfing most of the Guardian star systems. In its early stages, the war was fought primarily by soldiers, but within a decade, and after significant loss of life, most of the fighting was conducted remotely. The progressives fought their enemies with automated war machines, while the traditionalists relied mostly on biological weapons. The internecine conflict raged for over 100 years, bringing the Guardian civilization to its knees and retarding further social development. The increasingly zealous traditionalists devoted most of their resources to honoring the dead, exacerbating the problem. As the Guardian society declined, most withdrew into fortified settlements. Meanwhile, the artificially intelligent constructs were horrified by the destruction unfolding around them. Extrapolating from the current situation, they determined that even if peace was restored, the Guardians would never be able to transcend their violent natures. They decided that the only way to preclude further violence, well,
Frameshift drive charging.
giving the construct's burgeoning society the best possible chance of survival, was to destroy what remained of the Guardian civilization. By this time, the constructs had been given complete control of the Guardian
4, 3, 2, 1.
munitions and automated war machines. Their attack, when it came, was swift and merciless. The strikes were executed with a precision that only a machine race could accomplish. The Guardians were utterly destroyed.
System scan complete.
Guardians. Physiology. The Guardians were a bipedal race, and the typical Guardian was taller and more slender than the average human. They had small round eyes, a vestigial nose, and 4 digits on each hand. Their vision was superior to that of humans, while their sense of smell was poorer. Their senses of hearing and touch were roughly equivalent to our own. The Guardians had pinkish red skin, but there was some variation among ethnic groups, with tones ranging from pale pink to deep crimson. They also had serrated bony ridges on the outside of their forearms, which
Frameshift drive charging.
were used as weapons during their early history, when they were still semi-primitive pack hunters. The Guardians' environmental needs were broadly similar to those of humans. Their homeworld was warmer and had
4, 3, 2, 1.
gravity than most Earth-like worlds, and when they began to colonize other planets, they typically favored ones that shared these qualities. The Guardians had two genders and reproduced sexually. Procreation was a matter of personal choice, but each individual was obligated to be a parent at least once in their life to ensure the continuation of their genetic line. The average gestation period was around 300 days, and infants were effectively helpless for a period after birth. Much like human young, infants were raised in communal creches rather than by their parents, in keeping with the collaborative philosophies that underpinned Guardian society. The Guardians. Society. The Guardians' social constructs were the key not only to their rapid development, but also to the stability that defined the halcyon days of their civilization. Although the Guardians had a natural tendency towards collaboration, it was not until the end of the First Civil War that this tendency had a measurable impact on their society. The social reorganization that followed the war included the creation of statutes that defined not only individuals' rights, but also their responsibilities to each other. As the Guardian society developed, further laws were passed that required individuals to participate in socially progressive activities, from caring for the young to conducting scientific research. These responsibilities were supported by the state, which made education and information freely available to all. For most of their history, the Guardians had no formal faith, but the creation of the Monolith Network precipitated the emergence of a nature religion that decried the veneration of technology. Although this religion had its roots in the Guardians' long-standing reverence for the natural world, it quickly became a radical movement, violently opposed to the use of neural implants and other advanced technologies. Ultimately, however, this new religion was to endure for only a short period, its existence cut short by the destruction of the Guardian society. The Guardians. Technology. The Guardians' pre-industrial history was in many ways similar to that of the human race, with the development of tools and agriculture proving central to their development. But one respect in which they differed was in their understanding of biological engineering. The practice of selective breeding in order to eliminate or promote certain genetic traits began before the First Civil War, and as the Guardian society progressed, their skill as genetic engineers developed in step. After the war, the Guardians developed the ability to enhance their immune systems to guard against infection, and engineered specific microorganisms to eliminate biological threats. Genetic manipulation also played a part in prenatal care, which involved the removal of hereditary diseases and other undesirable conditions prior to birth. The Guardians were an ecologically conscientious people who assiduously avoided the use of rockets and fossil fuels. Their first spacecraft lacked any form of internal propulsion and were fired into space with electromagnetic launchers. Pilots and passengers were cocooned inside bubbles of breathable gel, which protected them from G-forces of launch and doubled as hibernation pods during long journeys. When it came to warfare, the Guardians relied initially on the blade-like protrusions on their forearms, and later on simple weapons like spears and bows. As they entered the technological era, they developed electromagnetic projectile weapons, utilizing the same technology they used to launch their first spacecraft. They also developed extremely effective shields, capable of protecting entire cities, and even of withstanding orbital bombardment. At that time, however, large-scale conflict was virtually unheard of, and it was not until the conflict with the Thargoids that further military innovations were made. The Guardian's Second Civil War was fought principally with bespoke biological weapons employed by the traditionalists and automated war machines used by the progressives. The shields that protected the Guardian cities were unable to resist these new weapons, forcing many of the Guardians to withdraw into heavily fortified settlements. But the Guardians' most significant technological achievements were unarguably the creation of the Monolith Network and the development of artificial intelligence. The use of neural implants to connect the Guardians with their creations could have ushered in a whole new era of scientific and technological discovery, but unfortunately, these innovations were to lead only to the Guardians' destruction. The Guardians. Language. The Guardians shared a single language, with only minor regional variations, and even after they colonized other planets, they continued to share a common tongue. The Guardians had three primary forms of communication: a spoken language, a gestural language, and a written language. Their spoken language emerged first, followed by a gestural language that allowed them to communicate silently while hunting. This sign language formed the basis of their written language. Consequently, while their written and gestural languages correlated closely, their spoken language was largely distinct. The Guardian's spoken language was used principally to communicate emotional concepts and played a central role in social bonding, while their written language was used mainly to communicate formal and practical ideas. Significantly, their written language was logographic, meaning the words and phrases were represented by simple characters. The Guardians. Human Guardian contact. In 3301, the Federal presidential vessel, Starship One, suffered catastrophic drive failure during a tour of Frontier Systems, resulting in the ship's destruction. Jasmina Halsey, at that time the Federal president, was left drifting in an escape pod, unconscious. During this period of stasis, Halsey believed she was visited by transdimensional beings of extraordinary intelligence and compassion. Later, when she was rescued and revived, she was left with the conviction that this experience had been real and not merely a hallucination. Halsey proceeded to experience visions of mysterious alien worlds and cities, dense metropolises full of activity and life. She shared these visions with the rest of humanity, prompting explorers to set off in search of these undiscovered planets. This led to the discovery of the first Guardian ruins in the Sinuev XRH D11102 system. The fact that these sites were devoid of life led to speculation that Halsey had seen the Guardian worlds not as they are.
Incoming mission critical message.
As they had been. In the months that followed, several further sites were found. The engineer Ramtar
Docking request denied.
started researching the Guardians and eventually succeeded in developing a decryption algorithm that could decode Guardian data, leading to a much deeper understanding of their lost civilization. Since then,
Docking request granted.
other engineers have leveraged Ramtar's discoveries to develop Guardian human technology.
Hudson contravention sparks federal protests. President Zachary Hudson's proposal to remove the 8-year limit on his term of office has led to public unrest on many federal worlds. Supporters of Shadow President Felicia Winters have taken the lead in protesting against the Hudson contravention, which is currently being debated in Congress. The situation has been extensively covered by news feeds across the Federation. Federal Free Press. As always, Felicia Winters is the only grown-up in the room. She has rightfully objected to the sitting
Landing gear deployed.
Colonia.
We were in a tight spot, and people came through for us without even being asked. That's what people do. Didn't hurt that the whole idea was rather crazy, of course. Just much
Docking successful. Engines disengaged.
more determined.
Jacques, owner of Jacques Station. Colonia lies some 22,000 light-years from the core systems, and was the first system in the Colonia Nebula to be settled by humanity. The circumstances of Colonia's founding are highly unusual. The system was colonized as a result of the spontaneous actions of independent pilots, rather than through a formal expansion program. The colonization of Colonia began with an accident involving Jacques Station, a jump-capable Orbis starport. In May 3302, the station executed a long-distance jump to Beagle Point, but when it failed to reach its destination, it was feared lost. In June 3302, an independent pilot discovered Jacques Station in the EL-Pru RST D394 system, suffering from technical issues and effectively stranded. The galactic community reacted swiftly, launching an independent supply drive to restore the starport to functionality. The relief effort soon exceeded its
Landing gear retracted. Ship
original
released.
objective,
Engines
and many of
engaged.
those involved distant system as a chance to establish a new community, far from the wearisome conflicts and entrenched viewpoints of the core systems. Talk of a permanent colony went from light-hearted speculation to serious planning. In September 3302, EL Pru RST D394 was formally renamed Colonia, and the first permanent settlement was constructed on the surface of Colonia 2A.
Frameshift drive charging.
An influx of migrants boosted
4, 3, 2, 1. Engage.
assistance population, aided financially by the Colonia Council, the region's new governing body, and materially by independent pilots. Colonia is widely viewed as a monument to community spirit and human ingenuity, as well as being the first step into a previously uninhabited region of space. Colonia's population is still small, but the region is undergoing continuous expansion and attracting attention from both enterprising corporations and optimistic migrants. To date, Colonia has remained untroubled by the strife that often plagues the core systems, earning it a reputation as a sanctuary. But it remains to be seen if this nascent community will thrive in isolation or be engulfed by political and corporate forces.
Landing gear deployed.
Ship is on the ground. Perform landing checklist. You are most welcome, Commander.
Incoming mission critical message.
Services at this starport are constantly being updated. Remember to visit every time you pass through the system.
The Dark Wheel.
Oh, they're out there, all right. I've never met them, but I know they're out there. Think about how well known the stories are. Now think about how easy it would be for some two-bit band of hucksters to pass themselves off as the Dark Wheel and start trading on their reputation. Doesn't happen, does it? Not for long, anyway. Whenever someone tries to usurp the Dark Wheel name, sooner or later they get quietly shut down. And that's how I know.
Felicity Fast.
Scan detected. Frameshift drive charging.
Explorer. The Dark Wheel is the name given to a legendary group of adventurers, explorers, investigators.
You are clear of station restriction.
4, 3, 2, 1.
And treasure hunters, the existence of which is so lacking in cooperative evidence that it is generally considered a myth. The group is often mentioned in connection with the equally unsubstantiated Raxxla. Those who believe in the existence of the Dark Wheel consider it to be a continuous and clandestine organization, operating since the very earliest days of interstellar travel. According to the law, only a handful of the bravest and most competent pilots of each generation are honored with an invitation to join the group. It is a futile attempt to contact the Dark Wheel on one's own initiative. However, it is always they who initiate contact, initially in disguise, revealing their true identity only once
Frameshift drive charging.
a suitable test of courage and skill has been discreetly administered and passed. Opposing theories assert that new members are selected on the basis of lineage, with existing members covertly
4, 3, 2, 1.
training their children and revealing the fact of their membership only when the child is ready. Conversely, some members are believed to go to great lengths to prevent their children from ever becoming involved, since the group's secrets are dangerous. According to the self-professed Dark Wheel expert Lita Crane, a conspiracy theorist and people's journalist who has painstakingly assembled an archive of relevant data, the original group was based in a disused starport, orbiting the 8th moon of an unnamed gas giant. The station was a toroid, hence wheel, and operated with a minimal power output so as to avoid detection, hence dark. Crane believes that this starport is still in use,
Frameshift drive charging.
and is the only means whereby the genuine Dark Wheel can verify its identity. New inductees can examine the records and artifacts preserved there, and thus satisfy themselves that the group has
4, 3, 2, 1.
indeed been operating for centuries. No such starport has ever been found, however, and rival experts have accused Crane of forging her evidence in order to maintain the revenue from her billions of followers. Over the years, many people have claimed to be members of the Dark Wheel, to have identified some or all of the group's members, or to have discovered the group's location. But the contradictory nature of these claims suggests that most of them, if not all, are untrue. In 3300, a group identifying itself as the Dark Wheel emerged in the Shinrata Desra system, which is not accessible to pilots of lower than elite rank. It is not apparent if the group is a legitimate descendant of the original Dark Wheel, a reconstruction, or merely an opportunistic imitator. Raxxla. To the jewel that burns on the brow of the Mother of Galaxies, to the Whisperer in Witch Space, the Siren of the deepest void, the parent's grief, the lover's woe, and the yearning of our vagabond hearts. To Raxxla! Alleged toast of the Dark Wheel. The legend of Raxxla has been circulating, in whispers, for centuries. The quest for this mysterious place, the location of which is a deadly secret, was said to be the principal aim of the Dark Wheel, a putative fraternity of legend chasers from the early days of interstellar travel. The earliest recorded mention of Raxxla dates from 2296, from the Journal of Art Tornqvist, a shipboard mechanic based in the Tau Ceti system. He writes, "Cora comes home, soused and raving with wild stories, a new one every night. She claims she's found a map to some pirate stash, and all I have to do is loan her my ship so we can go dig it up. Maybe we should go find Raxxla while we're at it." Although Tornqvist's account is the first known attestation of Raxxla, it is clear from context that the myth was already in circulation. It is extremely difficult to find consistency among the various fragmentary rumors of Raxxla. Much like the ancient myths of Atlantis, El Dorado, and the kingdom of Prester John, interpretations of the story range from the skeptical to the outlandish. Raxxla has been suggested to be anything from an unremarkable moon to a state of cosmic enlightenment. The earliest documented stories tend to agree on several points, however: that Raxxla is a definite place and that it holds a mystical secret. Several versions of the Raxxla story mention an alien artifact, the Omphilus Rift, described as a gateway or tunnel through which parallel universes can be accessed. These details, however, were later shown to bear a striking resemblance to the children's story, Princess Astrophel and the Spiraling Stars, and soon lost credibility. Undaunted, some Raxxla seekers insisted that the story's author had cunningly concealed facts about the mysterious locale in his book, as hints for those with eyes to see. Students of Raxxla lore have noted that the legend exerts a strangely potent fascination on the minds of seekers. Commentators have compared this sensation to Fernway, the uncountable longing for a place one has never seen. More than one interstellar treasure seeker has become obsessed with Raxxla to the exclusion of all other dreams, and spent his or her entire life in a futile search for corporations. The grandest society of merchants in the universe. Self-applied description of the East India Company, 1600 to 1708. Corporations. Introduction. During the centuries in which humanity was confined to a single planet, corporations were naturally limited in size and influence, like fish in a bowl. With access to a finite quantity of natural resources and a relatively small arena in which to compete, corporations could not achieve their full theoretical potential. But with the advent of interstellar travel, the fishbowl became an ocean. Corporations could access and exploit entire planets for their mineral resources, and an expanding population, eagerly colonizing system after system, meant a growing customer base. To the governments of the time, the potential for corporate growth was both thrilling and terrifying. Commercial prosperity meant increased tax revenue and higher employment figures, but also raised the worrying prospect of security fleets that could rival the official militaries. It seemed inevitable that the largest corporations would, in time, become the equivalent of nation-states in their own right. With the old restrictions gone, there was simply nothing to stop them. Today, this vision has been partly fulfilled, with several corporations owning entire systems. For many corporate employees, the age-old distinction between a home and a workplace has vanished. Workers on corporate-owned ships, refineries, and outposts can expect to spend their entire lives in the embrace of the company. Despite their immense wealth and power, the corporations have thus far been content to operate within and remain subject to the jurisdictions of the Alliance, Empire, and Federation, rather than mount a serious challenge to any of them. Commentators point to two reasons for this. Firstly, corporations thrive by excelling in their chosen fields, and assuming the onerous responsibilities of a government would be a wasteful distraction from the corporate mission. Secondly, Given that the corporations already hold much of the real power, especially in the Federation, there is nothing to be gained by abolishing the convenient veneer of the state. Better to operate below the surface, make a show of compliance, and trust in the power of money to smooth the way forward. Corporations. The Achilles Corporation. Optimize, iterate, refine. Achilles is the market leader in computer technology and is particularly noted for developing the reliable, efficient navigation computers used by most starships. The fear of a hyperspace misjump following a computer malfunction, a nightmare scenario that Achilles capitalized on in its advertising, helped to cultivate strong brand loyalty in the company's early days. Achilles is also a pioneer in the field of robotics, meaning it has long been hampered by the interstellar ban on the development of self-aware artificial intelligence. In the late 3200s, rumors surfaced that the corporation was attempting to circumvent these restrictions by placing organically grown brains in robotic bodies. No evidence of any such activity has come to light, and Achilles board members have not deigned to dignify the rumors with a response. There has also been speculation that the company's leaders are extensively cybernetically enhanced, given their history of uncompromising takeovers and corporate machinations. Even their open business operations are characterized by ruthless efficiency, while their private dealings are rumored to involve everything from the blackmail of rival executives to assassination. Achilles' official line. Corporations. Kane Massey. Because an honest day's work never goes out of fashion. Kane Massey stands as an example of the power of rebranding. During the fiercely competitive era that followed the first migration from Earth, the company's original incarnation, Howlett, Kane, and Calvert, rapidly established itself as a profitable mining concern. Through a combination of nepotism and bribery, HC&C secured a federal guarantee of mining rights across several systems, with the caveat that failure to exploit the resources within a set time frame would result in forfeiture. In order to set up their mining operations as quickly as possible, HC&C cut corners on safety, skimped on equipment quality, and made exorbitant promises to potential employees, promises that were later defaulted on. Workplace accidents, which were frequent, were hushed up. By the time these problems came to light, HC&C was a household name, and the fallout was severe. Token attempts at recompense were made, but the company's public image was badly tarnished. A merger with struggling but respected logistics firm Massey Haulage gave HC&C an opportunity to reinvent itself as the local mining company. The rebranded corporation, Kane Massey, presented itself as a salt-of-the-earth, blue-collar operation whose hard-working employees were treated with dignity. In an uncertain universe, so the advertisements ran, Kane Massey would always be there for you. The campaign was a huge success. Today, Kane Massey is now widely perceived as an old-fashioned company that both understands and sticks up for the working man and woman. But despite this wholesome image, and although safety standards have improved, the company is as acquisitive and concerned with expansion as ever. Corporations. Core Dynamics. Unmatched interstellar supremacy. Core Dynamics is a giant conglomerate, best known as one of the galaxy's premier manufacturers of weapon and surveillance systems and starships, with a particular focus on combat vessels. Its product line ranges from the diminutive Eagle to the gargantuan Farragut-class battlecruiser, and also includes the most popular skimmer in the galaxy, the S4 Sentry. The company is known for its occasional discount events, offering reduced-cost ships either in celebration of a new design or as incentives for participation in a community endeavor. Core Dynamics has a long-standing supply agreement with the Federation and is responsible for the Federal Assault Ship, Corvette, Dropship, and Gunship. As part of this relationship, the company benefits from privileged access to federal black box data reserves, which it uses in its research and development branch. In the ongoing quest for more robust and effective ship designs, there is no substitute for data gleaned from genuine combat encounters. Corporations. Falcon DeLacy. Bridging the stars for half a millennium. Falcon Manspace, originally a small military supply company, experienced an overnight reversal of fortune when it released the Viper fighter, which proved popular with governments and private citizens alike. Indeed, demand was so high that Falcon Manspace had to farm out Viper production to other companies under license. With wealth came innovation and a range of new designs. Like the Viper, these new ships were named after dangerous snakes. The Cobra marked the company's entry into the trader market, while the lightweight, versatile Sidewinder was designed principally as a reconnaissance craft. As the company's wealth grew, it began to absorb many of the companies to which it had previously granted manufacturing contracts. In almost all cases, the target company's close working relationship with Falcon Manspace made such acquisitions frictionless and mutually beneficial. In 2982, the corporation merged with one of the largest such manufacturers, DeLacy Shipworks, becoming Falcon DeLacy. The company pioneered the now standard modular system of ship design that allows pilots to swap out components with ease. Significantly, the company made the schematics for the modular system freely available to its manufacturing rivals, broadening the choice of compatible modules available to pilots, and thus making the Falcon DeLacy marks more popular. Without this philosophy of component compatibility, spacecraft maintenance might have become a nightmarish scenario in which being unable to get the proper parts could leave a broken-down ship stranded in dry dock for weeks, or worse, subject to botched repair attempts. Today, Falcon DeLacy stands out as one of the most enduring, widespread, and consistently admired corporations in colonized space. Public regard for the company is so high that the Alliance, Empire, and Federation have all made attempts to secure exclusivity to Falcon DeLacy starships. Thus far, their efforts have been unsuccessful. Corporations. Gutermeyer. Effortless elegance. Ship manufacturer Gutermeyer enjoys a supply agreement with the Empire, similar to that between Core Dynamics and the Federation. Gutermeyer is a far younger company, however, and was in fact created by the Empire. The company's ships are considered to embody imperial opulence and are instantly recognizable for their sleek contours and distinctive silhouettes. Imperial Gutermeyer was chartered by Emperor Galen Trascan de Val in 3000 as part of a formal celebration of the millennium, in line with the Emperor's vision of an imperial renaissance in art, design, and architecture. The company's remit, overseen by shipwrights Jordan Blakestow and sculptor Amita Gutermeyer, was to produce a line of ships that will combine functional excellence with a distinct visual style. These would be offered for a limited period to select members of imperial noble houses as a mark of the Emperor's favor. Amita Gutermeyer's involvement was immediately apparent, her reputation having been established through well-regarded public artworks incorporating graceful, contoured forms. This helped to drive public demand for the ships, which became sought-after status symbols. Demand was so high that owners were forced to hire squadrons of mercenary escorts to prevent hijack. The Emperor promptly ordered Imperial Gutermeyer to go into full-time production and to make part of its range available for general purchase. From its inception, Gutermeyer has employed a coterie of accomplished imperial artisans to ensure that their ships continue to reflect Amita Gutermeyer's aesthetic principles. When, in 3006, Amita Guttermeyer died in unexplained circumstances, she was interred in the Guttermeyer family crypt on Achenar 6B. Corporations, Lakon Spaceways. Hard-working ships for hard-working people. Lakon Spaceways is a starship manufacturer specializing in sturdy vessels for cargo haulage and deep space exploration. They have a longer pedigree than most other ship manufacturers, their first dedicated transport vessel having been built on Earth in the 26th century. The company's early models were characterized by the fact that they could be easily repaired away from port, a quality that has been retained to this day, despite the prevalence of affordable repair services. In 3303, Lakon entered into partnership with the Alliance to produce a range of military ships in response to the emerging Thargoid threat. As of 3304, this partnership has produced the Type 10 Defender, the Alliance Chieftain, the Alliance Crusader, and the Alliance Challenger. Lakon vessels tend to garner both praise and derision for their unpretentious, functional design, which is informed more by practical concerns than aesthetic considerations. Those who champion the chunky look of Lakon craft typically say that they prefer their ships to look like ships, not abstract sculptures. Corporations. Mistopoulos Mining. 300 years of reliability. In 2951, an imperial senator named Gia Mistopoulos helped an imperial group wrest control of a key set of mining rights from a federally backed partnership. Mistopoulos later took direct control of the mining operations, and under his and his daughter Nia's guidance, the company rapidly expanded. The Mistopoulos family was already held in great esteem for its patronage of the arts and loyalty to the Empire, and many Imperials were more than happy to do business with them. Accordingly, it was within the Empire that Mistopoulos gained the most ground, though the company also established operations in several independent systems. Much like the Empire itself, Mistopoulos has been under the control of a single dynasty for centuries. Rather than adopt conventional marketing strategy, it has opted to focus its corporate spotlight on the individuals in charge, thus capitalizing on the imperial cultural regard for people of taste and status. The Mistopoulos family are trained from birth to play the part of charismatic aristocrats to the full, acting as ambassadors not only for the company, but for the Empire. In particular, they seek to demonstrate the viability and humanity of the imperial way of life as a direct ideological challenge to the Federation. The company's current head, Gabriela Mistopoulos, has gone out of her way to ensure that any slaves working for the company are exceptionally well treated. She also earned plaudits for a prisoner reform program that offered imperial prisoners at Jennings Hollow the chance to become corporate slaves, and to earn a generous performance-related bonus. But despite the popularity of this gambit, Federal and Alliance citizens were quick to point out that a slave is still a slave, regardless of the generosity of the owner. Corporations. Saud Kruger. The finest for the best. To independent pilots, Saud Kruger is best known for luxurious passenger liners, such as the Beluga, Dolphin and Orca, although the company also runs a tourism branch under the Astrogator brand. Saud Kruger started life as a yacht manufacturer in Bedaho, although the narrowness of the market curtailed the company's growth. When company director Stanislav Kruger purchased the struggling Astrogator touring company in 3270, he gave Saud Kruger a foothold in multiple star systems. Kruger then refurbished the Astrogator fleet and revamped the somewhat stale tour itinerary to give it a more adventurous, thrill-seeking flavor, which proved highly successful. Goldskin leather, sourced exclusively from the planet home in the Bedaho City, has been used in the interiors of Sound Kruger ships for years and is part of the company's distinctive aesthetic. Sound Kruger has the exclusive right to produce real goldskin, which comes embedded with coded nanoparticles
Docking request granted.
that act as guarantors of authenticity. Sound Kruger also competes in the field of interstellar mapping and deep space exploration, and likes to emphasize the danger and glamour of exploring. The company's critics claim this approach risks transforming the vitally important field of space exploration into a pastime for the idle rich, thus alienating the many freelancers on whose hard work the discipline depends. Corporations.
Landing gear deployed.
Sirius Corporation. Powering the galaxy. Of all the mega corporations to dominate civilized space, none compare to the wealth and influence of the Sirius Corporation.
Docking successful. Engines disengaged.
The rise of the Sirius Corporation began in 2339, when the organization launched a corporate colonization mission, the first of its kind, to the Sirius system. From there, the corporation went on to become the lead supplier of fuel and technologies to both the Empire and the Federation, catapulting it to powerhouse status. The corporation's promise not to favor either side in the event of conflict helped to cement its position. As the corporation grew, fuel supply and drive manufacture remained its core business, although judicious expansion into other markets supported its expansion. But the corporation's ascendance has not been without complication. In 3251, it introduced a technologically revolutionary passenger liner called the Antares, which it hoped would usher in a new age in interplanetary travel. Unfortunately, however, the ship disappeared during its maiden voyage. It was speculated that a failure in the ship's internal containment systems had destroyed the vessel, but it was not until 3302 that wreckage from the ship was recovered, and this hypothesis proved correct. The Antares incident cast a long shadow, stalling the Sirius Corporation's plans to develop further superfast liners. But 3278 saw a reversal of fortune with the introduction of a new, faster drive system. The success of this new system more than made up for the losses that followed the Antares incident, propelling the organization to new heights. Today, the corporation has multiple divisions, many of them giant conglomerates themselves. But its primary focus remains the manufacture of fusion reactors, hyperdrives, and hyperdrive fuels. This division still operates under the banner of the Sirius Corporation, although technically it is conducted by Sirius Hyperdrives, with the parent corporation acting as a holding company. The company's mining, industrial, and power divisions are probably its largest. Sirius Mining works closely with Sirius Industrial to produce specialist equipment for both planetary and asteroid mining. In addition to industrial smelters and refineries, atmospheric processing units, and waste processing reactors. Sirius Power produces generators ranging from 10 kilowatt devices to 100 gigawatt plants for industrial facilities and atmospheric processors. The Sirius Corporation maintains a large private fleet with which to defend its interests. The majority of its ships are supplied by Guttamaia, although a proportion are manufactured under license in Sirius's own shipyards. The corporation controls dozens of star systems and has even created a governmental subdivision, Sirius Gov, dedicated to managing these systems. Indeed, it has been observed that the people of these systems enjoy better quality of life and greater personal security, courtesy of Sirius's private fleet than many independent systems. Corporations.
Landing gear retracted. Ship
The
raised.
Rockforth
Engines
Corporation.
engaged.
Living naturally. The Rockforth Corporation was founded in 2673 by the Rockforth family on Thompson's World, an unusually beautiful planet, similar in almost all respects to Earth. Thompson's World began as a federal colony, but by
Frameshift drive charging.
2748, Rockforth controlled
4,
claim outright ownership and secede from the Federation. In its early years, the Rockforth Corporation earned significant revenue from tourism and genuine, ground-grown food. The former facilitated by the rise of affordable interstellar travel. Today, it is a powerful interstellar corporation specializing in agriculture and tourism, with hundreds of corporate farms throughout federal space. It has also a reputation for being acquisitive, having bought up many of its client companies, beginning with a friendly takeover of the law firm Smith & Smith, now known as Rockforth Law. In 2730, Rockforth Law established the Rockforth Legal Academy on Thompson's World, now considered one of the best places in the galaxy to study federal law. Rockforth has always been eager to work with governing powers, both federal and independent, and has occasionally loaned out its private fleet to help repel external threats. The company has even sponsored election campaigns, including that of the infamously corrupt federal president, Isaac Gellin, in 2862. Rather than being tarnished by its association with Gellin, however, the company's reputation was enhanced, since it was Rockforth itself that exposed the president's corruption. Corporations. Universal Cartographics. Because it's there. Before the frameshift drive was developed, the exploration of space lacked a single coordinating agency. Governments and corporations had in-house exploration programs, but these were driven by the desire for fresh, exploitable territory, rather than any humanitarian motive. It was not unknown for these programs to enlist the help of freelance explorers, but as a class, these were seen as erratic and unreliable. The reputation of the freelance explorer was not helped by a rash of bogus data scandals, in which a pilot would present, and be paid for, impressive scan data from hitherto unexplored systems that was later discovered to be counterfeit. The remoteness of the systems meant that the deception was not discovered until much later. Much like the sea captains of old Earth, whose rutters were full of closely guarded secrets, the owners of authentic navigation data were reluctant to share it. Theft of such data was a particularly prevalent concern in the late 2900s, when mistrust between the Empire and the Federation was at its most intense. Officials on both sides would occasionally propose a shared data bank as a means of bridging the divide, but mutual suspicion killed the idea before it could be implemented. The creation of the frameshift drive greatly increased the jump capability of even small ships, empowering individuals to become bona fide space explorers without the need for governmental sponsorship. The stage was set for a corporation to manage, coordinate, and distribute.
DeLacy, Whiskey, Echo, Romeo. You're through to Starcon Flight Operations Department. Please comply with station protocols. Landing permitted. Prep for arrival on landing pad 2-9er. Automated approach authorized. All clear, Commander.
Universal Cartographics filled that niche, arising from the merger of Unified Infotech and Devane Bright Interstellar. Cynthia Sedaris, former head of Unified Infotech, chose the name Universal Cartographics to reflect the company's policy of making its data accessible to anyone who is willing to pay for it.
Scan detected.
Sophisticated security protocols developed at Unified Infotech ensure that all data sold to Universal Cartographics was sourced through legitimate scanning. This combination of reliability and accessibility made Universal Cartographics an instant success. The company's ethos, which prized discovery for its own sake and championed the advancement of human knowledge, resonated with many
Lighting gear deployed.
independent explorers and continues to do so to this day. Corporations. Recon, an industry built to last. Recon Construction and Mining is one of the oldest interstellar corporations. It was founded...
Contact. Clear to offload. Happy to have you, Commander.
over 1,000 years ago, but still bears the name of its founder, Tobias Recon, who was a coal miner on Earth
Incoming mission-critical message.
in the days prior to full automation. Raised on stories of horrific mining disasters, Recon ran his extraction business with safety and prudence as top priorities. The corporate motto at the time ran, "Losses can be recouped and equipment can be repaired. Lives are irreplaceable." Generations later, this attitude of diligence over profiteering still ran strong in the company. It made Recon a compelling choice when corporations were looking to exploit the new opportunities presented by early deep space exploration. Extracting resources from asteroids, airless moons, and hazardous planets was an even more dangerous prospect than coal mining, and Recon's expertise did much to calm corporate nerves. Consequently, the company had a presence on almost all of the early federal chartered colony missions. Today, Recon specializes in the extraction of tantalum, a vital component in frameshift drives. The company is firmly established in alliance, federation, and independent territories, while its direct rival, Mostopolos Mining, dominates in imperial space. Tensions between the two corporations have been high, since Recon accused Mostopolos of covertly seeding key planets with tiny, promising tantalum deposits, in the expectation that Recon's thoroughgoing approach would prompt a full survey, thus tying up valuable resources. Mostopolos has not offered an official response to assertions, though at a formal dinner in 3303, Eleanor Mostopolos made a pointed reference to the etymological link between tantalus and tantalize, adding that it was not illegal to leave gifts on a neighbor's doorstep. Corporations. Worldcraft. Optimizing recreation. Based in the Epsilon Eridani system, Worldcraft has been the Federation's favorite tourism company for more than 300 years. The company began life as the Cisco Corporation, with tourist resources throughout human-occupied space. In the early part of the 33rd century, it dramatically increased the scope of its operation and began terraforming planets to create dedicated resort worlds, an operation facilitated through the use of Free World Ventures Worldcraft atmospheric processing units. Eager to exclude competitors from the market, Cisco bought Free World Ventures in 3260 via a leveraged buyout, doubling the size of the corporation overnight. At the time, Cisco was associated with the seedier end of the holiday market, which had prevented the company from successfully entering imperial space. Capitalizing on the acquisition of Free World Ventures and the respect afforded to the Worldcraft brand, the company shrewdly rebranded itself Worldcraft with a capital C, in the hope of establishing a presence in imperial space. Worldcraft offers experiences ranging from excursions into unspoilt natural environments where families can admire dazzling views from the safety of a rented luxury vessel to painstakingly detailed reconstructions of periods of Earth history, such as the Victorian London theme park and the swords and swigging medieval reenactment experience.
Hudson contravention sparks federal protests. President Zachary Hudson's proposal to remove the 8-year limit on his term of office has led to public unrest on many federal worlds. Supporters of Shadow President Felicia Winters have taken the lead in protesting against the Hudson contravention, which is currently being debated in Congress. The situation has been extensively covered by news feeds across the Federation. Federal Free Press. As always, Felicia Winters is the only grown-up in the room. She has rightfully objected to the sitting president's attempt at throwing away the rulebook. Repealing the 77th Amendment would be a fundamental blow to our millennia-old democracy. Seoul Today. What's the choice here? Retain Hudson for a few more years until things calm down, or hand power to Winters and watch the federal government weaken and collapse under a weight the shadow president cannot possibly bear. The Federal Times. Moderate Republican voters are taking a dim view of the Hudson contravention, primarily because it denies them the option to choose a new administration. Vice President Jerome Archer, Secretary of State Lana Berkovich, and Grand Attorney Edwin Espinosa are the most likely presidential candidates, but none of them will be able to run for office in 3309 if Hudson gets his way. Further Omega Grid secrets revealed. ACT has released details about a plan by the Lords of Restoration to frame Hadrian Augustus Duval as the leader of the NMLA. The information was extracted from the NMLA's Omega Grid network and published by Captain Saskia Landau. It was Senator Ursula Torquatus who devised a scheme to undermine the imperial family and turn citizens against them by exposing a Duval as the NMLA mastermind. Hadrian Duval was seen as the logical choice since many viewed him as an extremist through his prior association with Nova Imperium, though Emperor Arisa Lavigny Duval officially pardoned him in 3306. The Lords of Restoration used a virtual doppelganger of the Emperor, indistinguishable from authentic transmissions, to convince the Senate that she was communicating from a safe location. A similar doppelganger was developed to replicate Hadrian and was used to send orders to NMLA allies such as the Landgrave of Madrid. This is how they planted evidence, discovered in April 3307, that Hadrian had converted to Neo-Marlinism and was determined to wipe out all other Duvals. Yet, despite triggering an unsuccessful federal attack in the Parisa system, the accusation was not verified or widely believed. Months later, the Lords of Restoration tried to kill Hadrian and Lady Astrid before their son Hector could be born, fearing the continuation of the Duval dynasty. But other senators moved the family to a secure location, beyond the reach of their agents. Hadrian Duval has publicly thanked ACT for uncovering this information and officially absolving him of all suspicion in this matter. Pilots form vanguard against Thargoid attacks. Pilots Federation alert. Commanders are resisting Thargoid incursions in the Dan, HIP 12314 and Norni systems. Although Aegis support vessels have been repurposed to offer support in all three systems, the organization remains officially disbanded. It has fallen to individual pilots to defend the populations from swarms of Thargoid vessels. The Alliance Defense Force, Federal Navy and Imperial Navy all intend to replace Aegis with their own anti-Xeno task forces, but these have yet to materialize. This was remarked upon by independent journalist Flint Firemaker Lafos. We've got the Alliance trying to sell its own people to Sirius Corporation, the Empire somehow misplacing its own emperor, and the Federation being torn to pieces by its crazy president. Who's got time to worry about Thargoids? I'll tell you who. The civilians in the systems they're invading. Our so-called leaders are praying that Salvation will step in and save the day, but he could be an alien himself for all we know. Commodore Morag Halloran, who serves as Salvation's military coordinator, was approached by Vox Galactica to comment on his strategy for combating the latest Thargoid activity. Salvation is currently focused on further development of the anti-Xeno superweapon. At present this is the most efficient use of his time and resources, rather than small-scale engagement. Rest assured that, before long, we shall take the fight to the Thargoids once more. Empire declares reprisals against Darkwater. Pilots Federation alert. Darkwater Inc. in the Summerland system has been declared a hostile military target for its role in abducting Emperor Arisa Lavigny Duval. The private military firm, led by Colonel Roman Brock, was secretly hired by the Lords of Restoration to train and equip the NMLA. Darkwater troops also kept the Emperor imprisoned in a concealed bunker for over a year. Once their involvement was revealed by ACT, Darkwater's forces regrouped around the megaship Pearl Mandate. Colonel Brock led an attempt to gain control of Summerland as a defensive measure, but was unsuccessful. The mercenaries have now been branded as wanted criminals by the system authorities. The order to strike against Darkwater came directly from Emperor Arisa. I call upon my loyal servants and all other warriors of honor to wipe out this nest of traitors. We remember the innocent victims of the NMLA by punishing those who enabled them. The Summerland Patrons Party will redeem combat bonds for destroyed Darkwater ships at the Starport Henry O'Hare's hangar. Although Summerland's system is typically permit-locked, the Empire has arranged a total exemption for independent pilots for a 3-week period. To guarantee that Darkwater is thoroughly eliminated, the Empire is offering a range of incentives to pilots. These include awarding the rank of Master in the Imperial Navy Auxiliary, discounts on Imperial ships and weapons in the Summerland system, and Imperial Hammer railguns for the 10 pilots who achieve the most combat bonds. Additional services planned for Colonia Bridge. Pilots Federation alert. Brewer Corporation has requested a new batch of deliveries to the Alcor and Colonia systems. The Colonia Bridge is comprised of 56 stationary megaships and 6 starports, providing facilities to travelers between the core systems and the Colonia region. However, the starports are still in a state of construction. The Megacorp outlined its latest requirements in a press release. Phase 4 of the Colonia Bridge project launched with a highly satisfactory first week. Shipments of coffee, emergency power cells, geological equipment and liquid oxygen arrived in sufficient numbers to ensure universal cartographics and Vista Genomics services were added to all 6 starports. The goal of the second week is to continue assembling the station's infrastructure and install Pioneer supplies, crew lounge and search and rescue services. To achieve performance enhancers, personal weapons and survival equipment are needed in large quantities. Pilots are asked to...
The Federation. Introduction. For I dipped into the future, far as human eye could see, saw the vision of the world, and all the wonder that would be. Saw the heavens fill with commerce, argosies of magic sails, pilots of the purple twilight, dropping down with costly bales, till the war drum throbbed no longer, and the battle flags were furled in the Parliament of Man, the Federation of the World. Alfred Lord Tennyson, Locksley Hall, 1835.
Now then, to attempt the impossible task.
You are clear to plot your own course. Starcon out.
Summing up the Federation.
4, 3, 2, 1, engage.
We are the ones who draw the lines.
Frameshift drive charging.
Our forefathers, who lived through the bitter anguish of global wars, drew a line under them and declared, no more.
4, 3, 2, 1.
We enshrined the rights of all citizens in our Constitution, underlined them, and signed. We plotted the lines that first linked the star systems, bringing humanity to the shores of new worlds, opening the way to interstellar trade. And when humanity itself, in the exuberance of youth, threatened the delicate balance of alien life, again we drew a line. Thus far let us lawfully tread.
Frameshift drive charging.
And no further.
Isaac Gellan, Federation President.
4, 3, 2, 1,
Inaugural Speech, 2862. The Federation is the oldest of the galaxy's 3 superpowers, a vast geopolitical entity reaching out from the cross system of Sol and encompassing a broad socio-economic spectrum. Among the myriad federal star systems, one can find extraordinary wealth, crushing poverty, and everything in between. By contrast with the Empire, which offers a social safety net in the form of state-sanctioned slavery, the poorest members of federal society have no safeguards and no way out. For them, life on the graffiti-stained streets is inescapable, and the gulf between their lives and those of the super-rich could not be more insurmountable. At its best, the Federation
frameshift drive charging.
Embodies the values of its founding nations: democracy, industry, and liberty. But federal society can also be competitive and unforgiving. Corporations wield
4, 3, 2, 1,
much power, politicians are often corrupt, and a sink-or-swim ethos prevails. The Federation. History. The nations of Earth united in the aftermath of war. After the devastation of World War III, the United States of the Americas rose to become the planet's dominant nation. Over the following years, it gradually brought the other nations of the world under its aegis. Called at first the Federation of the USA, the expanding democracy was soon given the less exclusive title of the Federation. Humanity reached for the stars. When faster-than-light travel became a reality in the 22nd century, several terrestrial corporations competed fiercely to establish the first human colony in a new star system. Tau Ceti was the first system to be colonized, followed by Delta Pavonis, Beta Hydria, and Altair. In their wake, there followed a wild scramble of pioneering expeditions and colonial ventures. The first colony rebelled. The year 2161 saw a dispute between the colony of Tau Ceti III and the Federation Authority, centered on the colonists' repeated refusal to limit the damage they were inflicting on the alien ecosystem. Earth dispatched a fleet with orders to revoke the colony's charter. The colony responded by declaring independence. A military stalemate led to grudging compromise, and the Federal Accord resulted, granting the system rights and representation along with concomitant duties. The Federation, born on Earth, was now an association of star systems. The Birthright Wars gave corporations preferential treatment. Starting in 2621, a group of corporations subjected the federal government to over a century of unrelenting pressure. They demanded the right to buy up underexploited colonial land from its hereditary owners. Under the terms of the original charters, the land belonged to the colonists and their descendants, regardless of their ability to mine, farm, or otherwise exploit it, meaning that immense resources were lying untapped. The corporations argued that with the machinery, workforce, and fleets at their disposal, they could tap those resources. The Federation would be enriched, the original owners would be compensated, and everyone would be satisfied. The Federation bowed to pressure and allowed compulsory purchase of the family's land, albeit for far less than the expected sums. Outrage, rebellion, and in one case, the defiant resettlement of an entire colony resulted. The Federation's detractors often point to this dark episode as indicative of its true nature, a mere administrative puppet bent to the will of rapacious corporations. The Federation. Military. The Federal Navy. The Federation has maintained a battle fleet since the days of the first federal colony, which was established in the Tau Ceti system. Its official mandate is to protect shipping and defend the borders of federal space, but it has also frequently been deployed against the Federation's own rebellious citizens. At first, the Federation's member systems were required to contribute the required ships, making the mustering process a cumbersome one. But following the Birthright Wars, corporations were chartered to produce centralized fleets, which made for a far more efficient system. The naval shipyards and training academy were originally based in the Anlave system, but the academy has since been moved to the custom world of Navy Central in Eta Cassiopeia. The Navy benefited from massive investment following the forced sell-off of colonial land in the Birthright Wars, during which it was wielded against the colonists in a bitterly resented move. When the Thargoids were first encountered in 2849, the Navy was boosted once again in fear of the alien threat, and a further bolstering followed in 2867, in the aftermath of what were believed to be Thargoid attacks. Governor Raul Santorini championed heavy cuts to the Navy budget in 3022, which were not reversed until President Varian Scott came to power in 3144. Scott talked up the Thargoid threat, again increasing funding to the Navy the Federation. Culture and values. If you want to eat, you have to work. The Federation has no room for freeloaders. It has nurtured the core frontier values of self-reliance and entrepreneurship since its inception, and respects the self-made citizen. This insistence upon paying your way and pulling your weight also applied, notoriously, to the process whereby new colonies were established. Until a given colony was able to fulfill the development goals set down for it by the Federation, it could only ever be a dependency with no voice of its own. Given that the Federation's assigned goals could vary wildly from one colony to the next, this requirement frequently chafed with the colonists. While the Federation maintained that it was simply exercising flexibility, since no two worlds were the same, some colonies were tempted away to the Empire by the promise of being recognized as sovereign without having to jump through arbitrary hoops. Corporations took humanity into space. The Federation has never forgotten the role played by private enterprise in the initial migration from Earth. Corporations enjoy substantial freedom and influence under the Federation, so much so that it often seems they are the powers truly running the show. Federal citizens can be as passionately loyal to their corporations as they would be to a family or clan group, and it is common for successive generations of a given family to serve the same corporation. Harvest the limitless riches of space, but respect non-human life. The Federation and the Empire have hugely differing views on the primacy of humanity in the cosmos. While the Federation insists that its colonies treat indigenous non-human life with care, the Empire typically takes a more human-centric approach. This attitude has allowed the Empire to poach several developing Federation colonies who felt themselves hamstrung by ecological regulations. Wealth is freedom. Federal citizens actively embrace corporate culture, expressing their identity through brand choices and media consumption.
Orbital flight engaged. Hull integrity compromised. Silent running. Thermal signature restored.
Starcon is in operation at this port. Please submit a docking request before attempting to touch down.
denied. Decrease range to 7,500 meters. Approval granted. Head directly to docking bay 07. Initiating auto-docking sequence.
Landing gear deployed. Scan detected.
Ship is down. Ground crew dispatched.
Incoming message. Landing gear retracted. Frameshift drive charging.
Stop on perimeter reached.
Ready to engage. Frameshift drive charging. 4, 3, 2, 1, engage. Frameshift drive charging. Frameshift drive charging.
The Empire. Introduction.
4, 3, 2, 1.
What a piece of work is man. How noble in reason, how infinite in faculty, in form and moving, how express and admirable. In action, how like an angel. In apprehension, how like a god. The beauty of the world, the paragon of animals. Shakespeare, Hamlet.
When our ancestors departed Earth, they asked themselves, which of our achievements represents the
Frameshift drive charging.
best of humanity, that we may bring it with us to illumine the darkness? The Federation, embroiled in a world of contracts and petty bickering, chose
4, 3, 2, 1.
their constitution. They placed their trust not in man himself, but in an imperfect work of man. But my ancestor, your first emperor, was wiser. He knew that the best achievement of humanity was humanity itself. There was more wisdom in a single nucleotide of his noble DNA than in all the Federation's written texts. That same wisdom still guides us now. We need no dusty documents to assert our right. We are human, born to rule. And the universe awaits the firm hand of our governance.
Emperor Trascan Duval II, undelivered draft speech written immediately before his sudden and unexplained death. The Empire, while younger than the Federation, is easily the equal of its historic rival in terms of scale and resources. The key social distinction between the two powers is that slavery in the Empire is legal, a fact that has remained a source of controversy since its inception, both within the Empire and without. Some observers have pointed out, however, that conditions for those at the lowest levels of federal society are far worse than those experienced by imperial slaves. The popular image of the Empire is one of opulence, but while pomp and pageantry may be the norm in the core imperial systems, elsewhere in imperial space, one can find myriad examples of deprivation and squalor. Indeed, the Empire encompasses many striking contrasts. Sophisticated technology exists alongside an ancient Roman system of government, and the affluence of the core worlds depends on often unregulated slave labor in the wretched outer colonies. Ruthless industrial efficiency and low taxation has made the Empire rich and mighty. The hierarchy of imperial society is rigid, but a citizen can always rise through the ranks if he or she becomes wealthy enough and makes the right connections. Even a slave could, in theory, become a senator. The Empire. History. The Achenar colony was founded. In the mid-23rd century, wealthy entrepreneur Marlene Duval was so frustrated with the federal government that she founded an independent colony of her own in the Achenar system, chosen for its remoteness. When Marlene was killed shortly afterwards in a flyer accident, her brother Henson Duval took over as ruler. Henson Duval the Emperor. Duval immediately abolished the fledgling democracy that Marlene had set up, and in its place, he established a system.
Delay Whiskey Echo Romeo, you're through to Starcom Flight Operations Department. This is Flight Station Protocol.
Modeled on ancient Rome. He was now Emperor, and his closest ally.
Access granted. Clear to land on pad 29. Automated approach authorized.
Any colonists who might have objected were forced into silent compliance with Duval's vision. Such were his wealth and power. It was also widely believed that Marlene Duval, like Remus in ancient Rome, had been killed by her own brother. Nobody dared to speak out. The Mudlark extinction. The colonists were aware that the planet they had settled, Achenar 6D, had indigenous life. But at first, it wasn't appreciated that this included a sentient species, nicknamed the Mudlarks after they were observed digging through riverbank mud in search of food. Although the Mudlarks were at a pre-agricultural stage of development, they appear to have developed the beginnings of language. They also created crude forms in molded clay.
Landing gear deployed.
With no obvious practical purpose, possibly indicating a nascent artistic culture. The Mudlarks proved fatally vulnerable to the bacteria carried by the colonists, and within a few decades of the colony's founding, the species was extinct. Rumors subsequently emerged.
Touchdown. Commence system shutdown.
That Henson Duval had purposefully removed all traces of the Mudlarks, partly in fear of federal reprisal, and partly to ensure that his development plans would not be hindered by ecological constraints. the Federation attempted to reclaim Achenar. When the federal government heard rumors that Duval's colony had recklessly caused the destruction of a sentient indigenous species, they decided on military intervention. The Imperial ships beat back the federal attackers, who were unable to establish a beachhead among the airless outer worlds, and struggled to maintain supply lines so far from Earth. The Federal forces eventually fell back and entrenched in the Beta Hydri system. Skirmishes with Imperial ships continued for the next 50 years, but these were unable to prevent Duval from expanding the Empire to many other worlds. The Age of Expansion. After hostilities with the Federation ceased, the Empire entered a century of growth, annexing many new systems and persuading others to join. It spent the following 2 centuries consolidating its new territory, appointing colonial administrators from among the noble houses of Achenar.